Thank you very, very much. So the meeting is now being live streamed. It's a great pleasure to see you all today. We, the honorary officers, are in JW3. This is our first hybrid meeting. Amanda Bowman, unfortunately, has had COVID, so Amanda is joining us from home on Zoom, and we're very pleased that you're better, Amanda. I think people are waving to you. And can we also say for yesterday a big happy birthday to David Mendoza-Wolfson. Can I remind deputies that you are all responsible for your own conduct. You've been sent the document we usually send you on libel and slander. When you speak, can you also make sure that you give your name and your constituency? And because this is a trial hybrid, can you bear with us? Because when a deputy is called to speak, the tech team are going to enable that person to speak, and then the deputy will have to click their own unmute button. And I think this is going to lead to some silences. So we apologise for that in advance. Please bear with us. I'm probably not going to say anything in the silences, so please don't be offended at that or any sort of delay. Everybody needs to have their name on their iPad or their telephone. Things like iPad, Karen, Paul, or a name that's not recognisable will lead to you being disconnected. We have to make sure that we can identify everybody who is on the Zoom. So can you just make sure, if you can, if you need to rename yourself, on the top right hand corner there are 3 dots. If you click that, you can rename to make sure that you are identified. Just looking on my screen at the moment, for example, I can see Martin, I can see Tony. You are at risk of being disconnected. So can you please make sure that you do rename yourself, because otherwise the tech team are going to disconnect you. So again, can I just again apologise to you? We will have some delay, and we are all doing our best to introduce hybrid meetings. We're very pleased to be able to see you. Turning to the minutes from January 2022, I want to thank deputies. I've had a number of comments in relation to feedback. Jerry Lewis, thank you for you confirming that the minutes from last time did not give the number of deputies present or the apologies received. This will be amended, and also we need to make sure that our Treasurer, Ben, is described as a Treasurer and not a Vice President, so thank you for that. And there were some small typos. Thank you, Lee Dworkin. So what we're going to do is we will resend the minutes with all of those amendments. So I want to thank you for that feedback. And if there are no more amendments, I propose to approve the minutes with the amendments as notified. Thank you. Moving on to the Vice President announcement, I'm delighted to say, following the receipt of overwhelming nominations across the whole spectrum of the board, that Edwin Shuker has been re-elected as a Vice President. So we're all giving him a clap. Welcome back, Edwin. It's so good to see Edwin return. We are very much looking forward to working with Edwin, being part of the team again, and this is, as far as I'm concerned, fantastic news, and we have a really strong top table. So thank you very much. And when it comes to the divisional reports, Edwin will be presenting the report, but please bear with him, because he's only just been re-elected today officially. So if he needs to come back offline, he will do so. I can see a raised hand, and I'm going to ask, and you can put your hand up, is this a point of order? I can see Laurie Rosenberg, so I don't know if it's a mistake. Okay, if it's I'm presuming it's a mistake, because there shouldn't be a raised hand and he's not holding up his hand, but can the tech team lower the hand please. Thank you very much for that. So we're going to come on to Laurie Rosenberg very shortly, but just to say welcome back, Edwin. You are duly elected as Vice President, and thank you for all the work you will be doing. Now, apologies, we're going to come on to Laurie Rosenberg, who I think Tech Team obviously put up, who's earlier. So I apologise, Laurie, who's going to give a short presentation on bar and bat mitzvah twinning from the Yad Vashem Foundation, which is very, very important. So thank you for that. Over to you, Laurie. We're not going to take questions because we need to move on with the agenda. But if any deputy does have questions afterwards, they should contact the board team or Michael Uyghur. Over to you, Laurie.
Hi, it seems to be a long time since I've actually addressed a plenary. I think last time was 1996, and I looked a lot thinner and blacker, at least not so great. So very recently, just about beginning of November, I joined Yad Vashem UK Foundation to develop their bar and bat mitzvah program. And I'm so impressed with the impact that the program has and the impact that has on young people, forging a link with their heritage. And also the bar and bat mitzvah is that particular point in their lifetimes, like a cusp, looking at where they come from and where they're going. So the bar and bat mitzvah twinning program has been going for over 10 years. Up to now, we have well over 1,000, I think 1,086 young people who've managed to link with a victim of the Holocaust. And my involvement really is to put a bit more of an educational spin on it, number one. But number two, to ensure that as many young people can take part in this incredible scheme. Basically, the child will indicate that he or she wants to take part, and they receive a pack of information, including an educational pack, a certificate which is presented to them on their bar and bat mitzvah and so on. But the most important thing is that researchers in Jerusalem at Yad Vashem will link the child, the young person and their family with a victim of the Holocaust. They look for synergies, they look for clues. It might be from where the family came from originally. It might be in the name, it might be in the surname. And we've had some remarkable coincidences on this. I just want to talk about one. We held a meeting in Chigwell on a wild and rainy night in November. About 40 families turned up. And one of the families, the Fresco family, in fact, their child was twinned with a twin who died during the Holocaust. However, what they found out when they did their deeper research into this is that that twin had a twin who survived. Unbelievable. That meant that the surviving twin was able to make a relationship with the bar mitzvah, Harrison. And on that night in Chigwell, we actually did a Zoom call to Israel and spoke to this twin who survived. He's now a great grandfather and so on and so forth. I see they're counting me down. That didn't happen in the old days. So I want you as deputies, and this follows a meeting I had with Michael and so on, Michael and Simon Bentley, our chairman. I want you as deputies to actually reach into your communities and try to persuade as many of your synagogal organizations and so on and so forth to take part in this scheme. It means that the child forges a link with the past, makes them aware of the importance of the Holocaust. It enables them to study a bit of the Holocaust and produce a project which they can show. It also enables them to counter the virus of anti-Semitism in a way that wouldn't be possible before. I really feel that the deputies, you have the unique inroad into the community, especially smaller communities. And I've been speaking to Ed Horridge as well. We need to get as many young people to sign up. There are at least 1.5 million children who perished during the Holocaust. Their voices were hidden now. Their voices were cut off by anti-Semitism, by genocide. Their voices were unable to be held. Our young people become their voices, sharing their memories, telling the stories to the future, and making a link between the past and the future. I really hope that you will be able to communicate this to your constituents, to your synagogues, to your communities, and enable them to take part. It's yadvashem.org.uk, and if you go onto that website, you can find all the information there that you need. I wish you well. It's great to see Edwin back again, and I miss you guys, you know. I do miss the board, and I wish you well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. You're very welcome to become a deputy again. I'm sure that we would greatly benefit by you rejoining. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Any deputy that is able to help, that would be a fantastic mitzvah. Please contact Edwin, Shuker, or Michael Weig, or any member of the board staff. And thank you very much. We very much enjoyed your report. Thank you to us. Thank you. Coming on to the President's statement. First of all, condolences to our dearest, longest-serving former deputy, Malvin Benjamin. His stone setting is going to be on the 20th of February. And can we wish a refuah shalema to Joy Wolf? I understand that she had fallen over and was in hospital, but we're delighted that you're online, Joy, but we wish you a refuah shalema. The President's statement sent out to you wasn't able to include the fantastic and amazing opportunity that Michael and I had when we met with His Holiness the Pope. It was an incredible experience, and this is so very good for Catholic-Jewish relations, and it's all been reported very, very well in the Jewish News and in the Jewish Chronicle, and we want to say thank you to everybody that made this possible. And that really does show the standing of British Jewry, that we were able to secure such a meeting, and the friendship that we were both given is something that I'm sure Michael and I will always remember. Also in the President's statement, there is an update on the BBC and Oxford Street. Just to update further from then, we are preparing a detailed submission to go to Ofcom. It's to go on Wednesday, and we have instructed lawyers to assist in this process. It is very complex, but it's felt that this is an issue which is so important and integral to the Jewish community that we must submit a proper submission to Ofcom to see what the outcome of that is going to be. But from our perspective, having engaged a forensic expert and a linguistic expert, we are adamant that this anti-Muslim slur did not happen, and this needs to be recognised by the process through Ofcom, and a partial apology is simply not good enough, and it's not something that the Jewish community should accept, and we need to follow this process through. We've given a full response on Amnesty International. The report was a very strong report. I was delighted also to work with Keith Black, the new chair of the Jewish Leadership Council. We did a very, very good op-ed together, and it's always good for the community to be united on these issues. And we make it absolutely clear that Amnesty UK's report was absolutely rejected. We put our views very clearly in the op-ed piece in the Times, and the link has been given to all deputies. Would there like to be any questions? Because I think that the President's statement was very full. I think we had a record number of questions. We've tried to give answers. Would deputies like to? I can see a couple of hands going up, so forgive me if there is a delay. I can see on my screen Susan Pascoe, Janet Tresman, Natasha Hausdorff. So I'm going to take the questions, and Paul Moron and Lee Dworkin. So tech team will take the questions in that order. And the clock of 2.5 minutes should also be going up. Susan, your question first. Can you say your name and constituency, please, as well?
Susan Castro, Nostra Community. So I congratulate you and Jewish Leadership Council on your very strong and forthright condemnation of the Amnesty International report calling Israel an apartheid state. I also welcome the investigation led by UK Lawyers for Israel to ascertain whether there have been regulatory breaches. The investigation by the Charity Commission to investigate whether regulatory breaches in the funding of this report. But what I want to ask is the board going to adopt a multifaceted strategy? I.e., is the board going to seek a meeting with Amnesty International? And when does the board decide when a meeting is appropriate and when a meeting isn't appropriate? Because I think this is an issue that needs to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We've absolutely rejected the Amnesty International report in full. We've made that very clear, so I agree with the sentiments. Personally, there's been no plan to have any meeting to give oxygen to these people, and I think that having a meeting will give all the wrong messages. We've made it clear that the report is absolutely rejected in its entirety, and we're not here to negotiate with Amnesty International. And as I say, to give it more oxygen or to make them think they're more important than they are, that would be a mistake. And there's also a current investigation by the Charity Commission, and it wouldn't be, in my view, appropriate to have a meeting until we all can see the outcome of that investigation, and we would review our position at that time. But I think that's a very good question. Thank you. Janet Tresman.
Yes, it wouldn't allow me to unmute. Janet Tresman, Finchley Progressive Synagogue. Good morning, friends. I've got 4 points from the minutes to raise, but they're more admin and a matter of language. First of all, in paragraph 4, headed the Archbishop of Canterbury, I'm really surprised that it's written of exploring the setting up of an informal working group to develop significant opportunities for deeper connection between the UK Jewish community, the Church of England, that's fine, but Christian communities in Israel, doesn't that go beyond our brief as deputies of British Jews? The second point, again, concerning language, which I think has been a bit loose in these minutes, is the matter of the MK extremists and reporting that we released a tweet rejecting his overtures, instructing him to return home. Is it our business to instruct anybody to return home? Seems a bit harsh, or not even harsh, it just seems inappropriate to say that. The third point is what happened to the missing paragraphs numbered 9 inclusive to 11. And finally, when I received the papers, I noted that the minutes of the last minute were watermarked confidential. When can we report to our communities of what happened at previous meetings if the papers are marked confidential? We're under obligations as representatives to report to them. Otherwise, the report would read, I attended the meeting. It doesn't seem right to me. Please, could you answer that last question particularly? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. This is a live stream meeting. Anybody can listen in, and this is obviously not confidential. Things that are written down on paper raise data protection issues that also need to be considered. I will ask Ben Crown for the FNO to relook at the issue, but what is actually sent out in writing is not necessarily straightforward. I will apologise. I think there was some concern about some of the language in the minutes, but an informal working group is proposed to be set up with the Anglican Church, and we'll have to look at what is going to be proposed, but there's nothing clear on the table yet, but you can rest assured that when we do set up a working group, it will be within the board's objectives. So thank you again for your comments. In relation to the tweet on Smotrich, I think you'll find that the overwhelming support was there for that tweet. And we don't in the UK feel if someone wants to come to the UK to engage with UK communal institutions, we take on prejudice, we do not accept racism and homophobia, and the question would have to be asked, how can we say that we as a community should not be subject to anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish racism if we don't stand by our words? So I think that has been widely reported, and I appreciate that some of you may have a difference of opinion. This is not interfering in Israeli politics. Nobody's going to Israel to interfere, but I think you will also find there was widespread support given for this tweet. Yair Lapid issued a very positive statement, and so did Nachman Shai. But the things that were said by Smotrich were absolutely extreme and have got no place in the UK. I won't report all of the things and go through again what he's said, but Nachman Shai said Smotrich has nothing to do in the UK. The community there has already given its opinion. Racism has no place anywhere. Go home. This is the diaspora minister talking here. And Yair Lapid warned and said, his quote, "If we let racist MKs enter Israeli politics, this will harm us abroad, especially with world Jewry," and that unfortunately we can see this happening in front of our very eyes. So we make no apologies at the Board of Deputies for calling out this individual and for doing this in a strong way. And we want to reiterate, because there's been some speculation that there's some sort of conspiracy, this tweet was not written by anybody in the Israeli government. Thank you for that series of questions, very appreciated. Next, Paul, I'm sorry, Paul Moran. Sorry, I'm told Natasha's correct. If it's a mistake, I'm sorry, bear with it. But Paul, I've asked Paul to speak, and I will come to Natasha. Apologies. Paul, because you're top of my screen, so that's the order that you've come in. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Moran, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council. First of all, can I also personally just say welcome back, Edwin, and can I also take the opportunity of congratulating David Mendoza for his promotion to being the senior Vice President. I think that's good news too. Can I also commend the work done with the board, both with regard to Amnesty International and also the BBC. I think there'll be two very, very big areas, and it just shows you the importance of the work of the board. On a very different matter, can I thank the board and the president again about the work that's being done in promoting the Jewish leadership in Scotland. Since the last SCOJEC AGM in June 2021, may I ask the President what progress has been made in negotiations between the Chair of SCOJEC and the President of the Board of Deputies? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The board has categorically expressed its wish to try and help the community of Scotland. We have put our proposals into writing in an MOU, and we just haven't heard back from the chair of SCOJEC that SCOJEC wish to accept these proposals. There are obviously some internal issues in Scotland that need to be resolved, and we hope that they can be for the benefit of the community. But from the board's perspective, we have offered to help to make sure that the community in Scotland are representative. represented. So if the MOU that we have issued and was previously agreed by the last chair of SCOJEC wants to be taken forward, we look forward to hearing from SCOJEC. Thank you. Natasha, and apologies to you, Natasha Hausdorff, you're next.
Natasha Hausdorff, UKLFI. Towards the end of last year, upon my return from meetings with the Jewish community in Dublin, I was prompted to ask about our policy of comment. And there ensued a discussion in the November plenary as to whether the board had a social media policy in place. Now, as a relatively new deputy, it was the first plenary at which I raised a substantive matter, and the issue was immediately shut down. Now, after my further formal requests for the social media policy were similarly shut down, I raised the question of the President in advance of the subsequent plenary. And not only was this not answered, but the written response insinuated that my request for information about the social media policy was in some way harassment. I invite the deputies to read the response and draw their own conclusions. But recent controversies, which have already arisen in this plenary, demonstrate that the question I raised as to the board's social media policy is as pertinent now as it ever was. So will there be an apology for previous obfuscation? And will deputies be presented with the answer without delay? It's obvious to me that there are three possible scenarios only. Either there is a policy that is simply inadequate, or there is a policy that is not being adhered to, or there is no policy in place. But whatever the real situation, this is clearly an issue that requires the immediate attention of deputies. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. As has been explained very clearly to Natasha and to deputies, the social media policy that is part of our staff's terms and conditions of employment is not open to deputies, because this is a matter relating to their employment. They also are managed by our chief executive, and it's not appropriate for deputies to examine how staff do their job. This is a matter for the chief executive. So Natasha was very clearly told that terms and conditions of employment and people trying to comment on individual members of staff is totally inappropriate. So there are social media policies and other policies as any employer and any charity would have. In relation to the use of social media, that is merely a forum for how the board chooses to make its statement. And if Natasha is referring to the tweet for Smotrich, this complied with our internal processes and protocol and is a matter for the trustees, and it was properly considered. So the question, I think, is still directed at a member of staff, which I feel is not appropriate, and staff terms and conditions of employment are a matter between the board and the staff. So I think that has been responded to very clearly, and I continue to repeat that position. So thank you for your question. Lee Dawkins, please.
Lee Dawkins, Maidenhead Synagogue. I'm quite new as a deputy, so I hope this is the right time and place to ask this question, but there didn't seem to be a single mention of Ukraine in any of the board papers that I read. So here's my question. Are any efforts being made by the board to assist Ukrainian Jews in situ or to get them out if they so wish, including to Britain? And if, like the kinder transport efforts, British Jews need to launch a campaign to house them, but whole families, not just children. And this is coming really from the leader of my community, whose mother came to Britain via the kinder transport and has already offered space in his home to a Ukrainian Jewish family. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's an excellent question. Look, the situation in Ukraine remains extremely serious, and there is an increased worries that an invasion may take place. We obviously cannot interfere and wouldn't do so politically. World Jewish Relief are considering the position, and if you look on their website, they make it clear that this is under review. I do, however, want to say that I work with Rabbi Bleich, who is the chief rabbi of Ukraine. He's issued a message. The thriving and active Jewish community in Kiev consists of 60,000 Jewish people, including thousands of men, women and children who are affiliated with the Kahila on a regular basis. Under the leadership of the chief rabbi, the community boasts several shuls and schools, 2 children's homes for orphans and children from troubled families, an assisted living home for elderly Jews, a kosher hotel, as well as a very active community centre. And the Jewish community has a summer camp, which is about 100 kilometres west of Kiev, an area that's deemed to be much safer than the city is. And the camp is actually hurriedly being set up to house about 320 people from the community. And Rabbi Bleich has put out a fundraising request. I have just been given the link to that. So what we will do is we will put that on the board's website. And if deputies want to look at that and anyone feels that they can contribute directly to the campaign that's been set up by Rabbi Bleich, the chief rabbi of Ukraine, that would be something that would be very, very important to do so. And also the community will have to cover the expenses of those that remain behind, cannot go into the camps. And this is very much a situation which is continuing to evolve. It's very unstable. There's a huge amount of turmoil. I think currency is devaluating all the time. And what we need to do is to make sure that as a humanitarian act and not a political act, that we can give all the support that we can. If there were refugees on the ground, and we pray for peace that does not happen, then I know that Israel would do all that it can to actually help refugees. And as a community here, we would do all that we can also to advocate assisting refugees in every way possible. So can I ask you all to pray and hope that this is a situation which does not escalate into an all-out war. And we will put the link out from the Chief Rabbi Bleich. So thank you very much for that. Next, please, Vicky Harris. And can I just say before Vicky speaks that I need to come on to the divisional reports by 11:30, so we'll get as many questions as we can. Vicky Harris.
Hello. Hello. Good morning, everyone. President, 2 follow-ups to my questions to you, for which thank you for your replies. I appreciate there's always a problem with getting papers out in a timely fashion, but giving us 2 days before a plenary to consult our community if papers come out on a Wednesday is perhaps a little bit of short notice. I wonder whether you could ask Michael and the team to consider whether there are any ways in which we could have papers more in advance. Turning, however, to my more important question, I would like you to tell the plenary today what our top 3 priorities are at the board. I don't particularly want to wait for the long-awaited board plan with all its details. So if you could just elaborate what you see and what the trustees see as the 3 top priorities of this board.
Thank you. In relation to the papers, they have come out from time immemorial on the Wednesday. It's a living document, and as we can see from last week, things are happening, and I think that the board team want to make sure that as far as possible the board statement is up to date, and we were still getting questions very, very late on, and I know that we wanted to try to give as many answers to those questions. So we'll try and see if they can come out earlier on a Wednesday, but this is always a very pressurised time because it's a very big thing to actually produce, and we do want to make sure that everyone has the information. We have our senior management team and strategy day straight after the board plenary, and we have our board plan in draft, and I don't think it would be a good idea for me to disenfranchise my fellow trustees and the chief executive. So the board plan will be distributed, and please, deputies should have no fear. Anti-Semitism, of course, fighting anti-Semitism is going to be very much at the top of the agenda, so you won't have to wait very long, but I think it's important that I actually consult with the trustees and the chief executive before announcing the strategic plan. Much as I would like to share this with you, by this time next plenary you will have the plan, so it's very much in an advanced stage. Thank you so much for your question, Vicky. Next we've got Rick Cooper, and then Baruch Michaels will come afterwards.
Cooper, Portsmouth and Southsea Hebrew Congregation, building on Natasha's and Janet's important points, and also following on my question. I may be in a minority amongst the deputies here, and certainly amongst the executives, but I believe that I am speaking for the broad silent majority of Anglo jury in what I'm about to say. We are the Board of Deputies of British Jews, not the Board of consciousness-raising progressives. Our job is to represent the people who elected us. And may I remind you, a deputy should always be elected, never appointed, and not to try to force change inspired by the transient trends of popular culture on a Jewish population that is, for the most part, broadly traditional and conservative with a small c. That's it.
Thank you. Well, we are very proud to be a democratic and representative organisation, and there may well be some conscious raising progressives, not in the denominational sense, but those types amongst the community. We are, in effect, a broad church. We represent the full diversity and spectrum of Jews. The board doesn't always get everything right, but we feel that we have the overwhelming support and consensus. I think it's always best to raise specific issues to actually discuss whether or not it's felt that we might have got something wrong, or we should have tackled something in a difficult way. But we're here to talk, and the quality of our dialogue, I think, is really, really important. And this is a forum for us to have these discussions. And we are, I think, unique in the world that we have such a fantastic organisation where everybody can give their views. We have 20 minutes left, so just reminding you about the time. So the next to speak is going to be Baruch Michaels, Adrian Cohen, and then Paul Edlin. So Baruch. We're just waiting for Baruch to...
Hello.
Hello there. Over to you.
Good morning. Baruch Michaels, UJS representative, University of Manchester. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sure you are aware of the unfortunate events that occurred at the University of Manchester last week. I was the student who organised the event during Anti-Semitism Awareness Week outside the Student Union. Not only was our stand disrupted from advertising, but our students and lecturers were called in public, quote, worse than Hitler. Due to what has now occurred, I was informed by the UJS and Stand With Us, the Israel Advocacy Organisation, that no more stands on campus at the University of Manchester can be organised in the near future, as we are afraid that creating new events with an Israel flag would invoke a negative response. What can the board do to communicate to the University of Manchester that this is unacceptable? Jewish students or students that advocate for Israel respectfully have the right to be protected and to make them feel safe to express their voice. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry to hear that you had that experience. We, of course, work with UJS, and I think it's best as a first point that we speak to the UJS president to see what support and help that they want us to actually give on campus. You'll appreciate that as a UJS representative. Also, I think it may well be a good opportunity for me to see if I can get a personal meeting with the Vice-Chancellor where we can make sure that this is absolutely unacceptable. So this is something that we will take up, and I will also speak to Vice President Amanda Bowman about that and what we can do to take it forward. But thank you for that. Adrian Cohen, and then Paul Edlin, and then Robert Stone.
Up on Susan Amnesty International. In 2018, there was an attempt to have a strategy of engagement with various NGOs, including Amnesty International, and it came to grief. And the reason for that, it was led on that occasion by the Jewish Leadership Council. But the reasons for that were that at the end of the day, Amnesty International were not good faith players, in that a meeting was arranged with Amnesty, with the JLC, with an organisation called UN Watch, and other interested parties, which Amnesty International then refused to participate in, and then refused to allow their premises for the meeting to take place. It was something that was covered in the national press, including The Guardian at the time. So I think we do have to be very circumspect in how we approach these organisations, because we can't even assume that they're prepared to talk to us in good faith around the table. And there have been further reports recently about various comments that have been made within Amnesty UK as well, which raise concern. So I agree with Susan's sentiments, and someone who always believes in discussion and engagement where possible. I kind of understand where Susan's coming from, but I just think in this particular case, Amnesty's got a very difficult track record when it comes to engagement, so we have to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak, Paul Edlin, and then Robert Stone, and then I can see Mervyn Smith. We will take as many questions as possible, but we will be finishing at 11:30. Apologies.
Thank you, President. Paul, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council. Further to Paul Moran's comments on the situation in Scotland, I'd like to remind deputies that we still have a United Kingdom, of which Scotland comprises 6 million people, maybe 7, and England is 63 million. We are in a situation in Scotland where the devolved government does not cover defence or foreign affairs, but we have a severe problem with anti-Semitism, which is ongoing and virulent. The negotiations between the Board of Deputies and SCOJEC for the board to be involved in SCOJEC have been continuing since July, when Mrs. Livingston took over the chair of SCOJEC. And at the last SCOJEC trustees meeting on the 24th of January, she said she would be urgently seeking a meeting with yourself, President, to try and move these forward, while anti-Semitism is still raging. Now, the Scottish Jewish community need the professionalism of the board. We need the staff of the board and the officers to help us deal with anti-Semitism. This is affecting Jewish lives in Scotland. This delay is very serious and very worrying to the Glasgow Jewish community, which, as president of, I was telling you that we are worried, and we are the largest community in Scotland. So we really, really need the board's help and the board's professionalism to be involved in Scotland. And if the negotiations cannot realistically continue, can something be imposed or something be done? This is a serious. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, the board is not in a position to impose leadership or run the Scottish communities, and I know that Scotland would not ultimately want that. I just can only urge the representative bodies at SCOJEC and the Glasgow Representative Council, please, can you, for the sake of your your community come together and reach an agreement so that the Jewish community in Scotland can really feel represented. I hope that can perhaps come today and that dialogue can take place, and we do look forward to hearing. But from the board's part, we have said that we are prepared to help with funding for a chief executive. We have issued an MOU which has been discussed, and it was agreed by the previous chair. Please do come back to the table on it. We are here, we're ready and waiting to help. So thank you for that question. Robert Stone, you are next, and after Robert, I can see Mervyn Smith, Sheila, and Denise Lesser. We will finish my statement at 11:30, so if there's any more questions, I can't guarantee that they will have time to be answered. Robert Stone.
Right, I'm a bit puzzled, President, by your answer to Natasha Hausdorff's question. She was asking about whether the board has policies in place. That's not about individual judgments, that's about policies. I would have thought if we have a policy in place about how our staff use social media, or deputies, like whether we should comment on individual MKs coming to Britain, that should be reviewed. I don't expect you to say much now, but I will ask the F&O. I'm a member of the Finance and Organisation Division. I will ask them to look into this and see whether there is good reason why we shouldn't actually examine how we govern our staff. Can I please raise another issue in the light of recent events? I'm a deputy for Finchshire Reform Synagogue. One of our members, Melinda Simmons, is Her Majesty's ambassador in Kiev. I hope that in the International Division section, we will be saying something about not only her, she's doing an amazing job, but also about the Jews of Ukraine and what we can do to help them.
Thank you. As I do need to repeat, staff have got terms and conditions of employment. This includes a social media policy, and whether or not individual staff can tweet, and this is a common issue. You'll see on for example, the Jewish Leadership Council, Claudia Mendoza, she has a Twitter account. Daniel Sugarman, our head of politics, he also has a Twitter account. That is a matter between the chief executive and the board. That relates to their terms and conditions of employment. How the board chooses to make statements and what it says, this is a matter for the trustees in consultation with the chief executive and with the staff team. Unfortunately, we cannot make our statements through committee. We can't consult every single deputy. That isn't the way that we're able to work. Deputies can give their feedback, and we have to be nimble. We have to make statements. We don't always get things right, but this is why we've been elected. And these are subject to an internal protocol. We don't just make statements, we think about why we're making statements, what the objectives are, and we do have an internal process. So they're two different things. But our Director of Public Affairs, Daniel Sugarman, his terms and conditions of employment are between him and the Chief Executive. Thank you. Sheila. Sorry, Mervyn Smith. Whoever's unmuted first, but you'll both get your chance to talk.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yes, Sheila, and then Mervyn Smith.
Marie, hi everybody. Sheila Giewolf, Cardiff United Synagogue. Marie, I'm so delighted in the light of everything that people have been talking about this morning, fighting anti-Semitism, problems on campus. You know, this is what we do, this is what we're good at. But the prominence that has been given on item 7 to the SACRE conference that the board staff, Dawn Mortimer, the Director of Education and Community Engagement, and staff members helped with me and the volunteers on the Community and Education Division Working Group. Thank you so much for the the detail that was put in there and the prominence that's been given to the work we are trying to do to fight anti-Semitism by getting a Jewish representative on every sacre in England and Wales, and the support we can give them to go out into the community, to educate our young people, to help fight this horrible virus that invades our community. And I want to thank you again for the full report you've given. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just give some further clarity in case I'm missing the point on the Smotrich statement and its approval process. Just to be clear to deputies, this was approved by the HOs and the Chief Executive. It wasn't something that was just tweeted out by staff. And Daniel Sugarman, our Director of Public Affairs, he was on holiday the whole time. So if anybody's looking at him again, they're barking up the wrong tree. So thank you for that. Right, the person next, Mervyn Smith. Are you there, Mervyn? I can't see your virtual hand.
Yeah, he's ready, he can go. Go ahead, Mervyn. Mervyn, go ahead.
Thank you. I put in a question and you responded. And unfortunately, again, I feel that it's an unsatisfactory response. It's relating to the apartheid, and particularly with regard to London School of Economics. And I put in my question that and as a new name in my mind of the London School of Anti-Semitism. Now, this was several years ago when the Chancellor arrived, and I asked him the question with regard to the actions of the students, and nothing was responded. But obviously comes to pass that nothing has taken place in between. And I empathise with Baruch Michaels and his problems up in Manchester. We should have a much fuller and much stronger action with regard to the circumstances within universities, because little or nothing is being done, and certainly in my view, nothing has been done in relation to the London School of Economics and the actions of the students there. What if you make reference to a discussion that is to take place? This is, I believe, 4 years after the position when the Chancellor arrived to talk to us from London School of Economics. What, if anything, is going to be done, which is going to have a fuller benefit to students? And in addition, what is going to be done to assist young Jewish people in understanding the history of Israel from the Mandate onwards, which would benefit young people involved with Yachad, who are a disaster in my opinion, and also a new group I've heard absolutely nothing about before, but were called upon by BBC in respect of the Hanukkah disaster, called Na'a Adom. I know nothing about them. You hopefully will know much more, and it may well be worth.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry, everybody. Melvyn was timed out. I'll do my best to answer some of Melvyn's points. First of all, can I remind deputies, I did say at the beginning, you are responsible for your own conduct and what you said. I appreciate your strength of feeling, Mervyn, but you should not describe the London School of Economics as the London School of Anti-Semitism, and the Board of Deputies does not condone that. We distance ourselves from that description. That really is not appropriate. I also would like to say that the London School of Economics does have an excellent faith centre. Father Jim Waters does do an excellent job, and they really are doing a huge amount of what they can to actually encourage dialogue. They've poured a lot of money into this faith centre. I myself have been invited there, and there is a lot more going on behind the scenes than you give it credit for. I do think, however, having said that, I will talk to UJS, and I will see if it's time where I can have another meeting with the Vice-Chancellor, but this is a school where a university where there has been a lot of progress from years ago, and I know that Amanda Bowman is majoring on university campuses, but I will seek to have a meeting, and we are also in conjunction with this doing a lot of work in relation to trade unions, where I'm also seeking to have meetings. So I think it's a very good reminder there, but I do want to say there are very many positive things also going on at LSE that I know about because I've been invited to them, that I think people need to recognise that, and we can't describe universities in that way. It's not going to help our cause. We are going to finish in 5 minutes on the President's statement. So we have Denise Lester, and if we had time, it will be David Safir, but I think I do need to let Nina speak. So can you please be briefer than your 2 minutes, if you can, please. Denise Lester first.
Thank you, Madam President. Denise Lester, South Hampstead United Synagogue. I'm concerned that we, by Adrian Cohen's comments, that we should be circumspect or measured in terms of engaging in dialogue with Amnesty International. We are the Board of Deputies of British Jews. We represent British Jews across the country to the external world. That would arguably include at least one friend of mine who is a member of a synagogue who organises Amnesty International charity fundraisers events, which I've been to and would like to go to. Amnesty International is an incredibly powerful international organisation that engages in invaluable human rights work. We do have a human rights perspective, an international perspective to our work. We should engage in dialogue with them. If they have, arguably, from our perspective, their value sets wrong and aspects of their policy wrong, it does not negate dialogue. The late Rabbi Lord Sachs always said we should engage in the dialogue and dignity of difference. And therefore, whilst I don't set policy at the top table, I would urge the board to consider engaging in dialogue, and also it will elevate the respect of those who also on the ground engage in their charitable work and advance the aims of Amnesty International. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I fully understand why you've raised this. In my view, the report by Amnesty was so extreme, so demonises Israel. I do not see that there can be any positive reason to engage with them. They are being investigated by the Charity Commission. I do think it's very important that we wait and see what happens there, but I cannot see any good outcome in engaging with such an organisation that shows such utter contempt and hatred for Israel. David Safir.
Thank you, President. 2 very brief points of information, one about Ukraine and the other about LSE, which, by the way, I'm sure you won't be offended if I describe as it was when I was a student there. It was known as the London School of Economics. I don't think anybody would be offended by that today or then. But as far as LSE is concerned, please note it is not a Chancellor or Vice-Chancellor. LSE has a director, Baroness Shafiq, who is extremely Philo-Semitic and, as I'm sure you know personally, is very much engaged in trying to ensure very good relations with Jewish students and with the Jewish community. The second thing is about Ukraine. There are indeed 4 chief rabbis of Ukraine. One of them, Chief Rabbi Alexander Dukovny, is actually the leader of the progressive congregations, the progressive Jewish congregations in Ukraine, and he is extremely well known to particularly Mosaic Liberal and Mosaic Reform Synagogue, and in fact participated in our Erev Shabbat service this very week. And I think that just emphasizes that bilateral contacts between individual constituencies and communities and others in Ukraine are just as important to reinforce and to keep open as back channels at this extremely, shall we say, precarious time for not only Jews, but of course the entire population of Ukraine. And therefore, I think if any other deputies are also connected in some way through twinning or whatever with Ukraine, it would be very important to share that information so that we can coordinate our response to support those in this precarious situation. Thank you.
Of course, we want to support all Jews in Ukraine. It's not arbitrary that I've mentioned the chief rabbi of Ukraine. That's the community that we work through the European Jewish Congress, who come to the table. So, of course, we would want to help everyone. We don't work every day with the whole community. We have to go through people that we do know and trust, and I will take on board what you've said, David, that there are other communities, but we may not be able to reach out and have contact with all of them. We will do what we can to do this on a humanitarian basis, but I also need to see what World Jewish Relief are planning to do, because I believe that we should coordinate with them, because then we will be able to help in a united way, and then we can be more effective. And to be honest, World Jewish Relief are going to be much more effective than the board, because this is what they're there for, and they've got the great experience in doing that. So I'd like to say that the board can solve all these issues. We can't. We'll do our best. And I'm just letting deputies know the message I've had from the Chief Rabbi of Ukraine, because I think that message should be given and noted, that there are other communities. We will get in touch with World Jewish Relief and see if there's any more information. But we hope and pray that there are not going to be refugees. But thank you. Thank you. We will absolutely keep this under review. I think it's entirely appropriate that Nina Friedman, UJS President, has the last word. Lots have been said here about students, people's views about campus and university. So let's hear it from the experts. Nina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Nina Friedman, Union of Jewish Students. I just wanted to clarify a few things. Firstly, I completely echo what Marie has said in distancing ourselves from the comments made calling LSE the London School of Anti-Semitism. Students at LSE are having a very thriving and vibrant student life, and I'd like to reiterate that it is a very safe and comfortable place to be a Jewish student. Only last week I was at LSE with Stand Up, who are an organisation that run anti-discrimination workshops, and we were running a workshop against anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate. So just as an example of the great work we're doing at LSE. And further to that, just to kind of reassure anyone who is concerned about the issues at Manchester, that we will be meeting with the university and the president of the Jewish Society in the coming weeks, so that we can work on next steps and how we can stop something like this happening in the future. But if anyone else has any specific campus concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at UJS, and we'd be happy to address any of these further. Thank you.
Thank you. And UJS do a magnificent job. We all have our concerns, but I think it is very important that as a first step that we do go to speak to UJS, because they are dealing with the issues on the ground. We need to respect that. We're absolutely there to help, and we've heard from Nina that LSE does have a thriving Jewish student population. And again, I would like to give credit to the Faith Centre run by Father Jim Waters, which I know is doing fantastic things. But that having said, there are some very disturbing incidents, and the community wants to be reassured what is being done and how can our students be protected. Thank you all for your bearing with us with the slight time delays. Thank you all for your questions to me. So we're now going to come on to the executive report, which has been presented to you. I haven't had any comment back on that. If there is any comment, I'm sure deputies will be quick to come back to me. We're now going to go on to the division reports. The first one is going to be presented by Amanda Bowman, and it will be for 15 minutes, and then we will need to move on to the Community and Education Division report, which is going to be presented by Edwin Shuker, who I'm delighted to say is back on the top table here and will present that in person. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Marie. And hello, everybody. I'm like you. I am joining you from home this morning. The first thing I wanted to say was it was too late to get into the President's statement, but from all of the trustees, we want to offer a big mazel tov to Lawrence and Lynn Julius on the birth of a new granddaughter in Israel this week. Mazel tov to you, Lawrence. Just a couple of things to mention to reinforce some of the things in a very busy report for February from the Defence Division. In the week after the CST issued their annual report into anti-Semitic incidents for 2021, which I'm sure you're all aware showed a record number of incidents of anti-Semitism, I just wanted to reinforce the work that we're doing in the division to tackle anti-Semitism within unions and other professional representative bodies. It's been identified as one of the priorities for the division in this triennium. And as the division report identifies, we've had meetings recently with both Unison and NEU, and we're working with UJS in relation to issues on campus with the UCU. The second point I wanted to make is about work that we've been doing over the last month around the upcoming changes to the legislation of the 2020 Coronavirus Act, which, as Marie's mentioned, is likely to come out this week. And we've been in touch with both the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office in relation to areas that relate to our community within that act. We've also been working with representatives of Jewish burial societies and with the Department of Health and Social Care around the digitisation of death certificates. You'll see there's been a lot of activity through the report, and I commend the report to you and open up to any questions that you may have for me. Oh, you're being very kind.
You're being very, very kind to Amanda. Well, that's very good. We've had a good discussion today, and we wish Amanda every recovery from COVID. So thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Can we now go on to Edwin, please? Would you like to present your report? And welcome back again.
Thank you, Madam President. I was very touched by the very warm welcome you gave me today. And that I can say today, my fellow HOs and Michael, within minutes I felt part of the team, and it felt like I have never left. So thank you for that. I'm also most grateful for the overwhelming number of nominations received from across the political lines, across denominations, age, gender, and for that I'm grateful, and I pray that I will live up to your expectations. I also thank the few very capable deputies who withdrew their nominations in favor of what I hope is what they perceive to be the unity candidates rather than because no one wanted the job. So I live in that hope. I am happy to present the division's report. Although it's not prepared by me, it was prepared by Vice Chair Andrew Gilbert. But I am familiar with this division, having served as its chair for 3 years, and it will not take me long to actually familiarize myself with its work. I thank you again, Marie, for asking people to be kind to me. Today, it's only an hour since I've been accepted as the HO, but I'm very happy to answer any questions you have. And the report shows, before you even ask any questions, that it is a very well-run division that I'm inheriting. There's 7 subgroups that have been working, and I see the work they have been producing. And I give credit to Gary for organizing it. So I actually look forward to shoe in very quickly, and by the next meeting, I should be on top of things and introduce a couple of things that I really am passionate about and add to the whatever subgroups are there. We will not change a winning team. Anything that works, we will encourage and empower. Thank you.
Any questions for Edwin? Well, you are being very kind today, Deputies. Here we go. We've got one for you, Edwin. Lead Walk-in and Paul Hart. And before Edwin's questions, can I just say a big thank you to Andrew Gilbert for holding the fort. You've done very well and worked very hard. So we also want to recognise that fantastic contribution. Over to you, Lee.
Hope you can hear me. Yeah.
We can.
Lead Walk-in Maidenhead Synagogue. Firstly, welcome back, Edwin. Certainly look forward to working with you. I did mention this in the VP hustings, but here it is again in front of a wider audience of deputies. The production and finalisation of the Stephen Bush report on racial inclusivity was an important step forward for the board, but there have been very few mentions since, suggesting that this was the end of the process of racial inclusivity rather than what should have been the beginning. There does not seem to be a great deal of ownership over tracking the implementation phase within deputies' communities and organisations. Responsibility seems to fall between the Communities and Education Division and the Social Justice Committee. So as the new VP of the CED, will you make this a focus for the division?
Thank you, Lee. And I'm glad you raised it again here. I stood in my mission statement, the Stephen Bush implementation, especially where it relates to education, schools, curriculum, is very, very close to my heart. I gave witness statement and testimonies to Stephen Bush, and I was most impressed by its 100+ recommendations. I will do my very best. It is a core thing that I stand for. And as I did tell you last in the hustings, you have now been appointed to be the head of the subtask. That's my first appointment, to actually work through the stakeholders and come up with some recommendations together with other interested deputies on how we could best implement these, as many as possible of these recommendations.
Did we have any other questions? Well, thank you. And I echo what Edwin has said. There were 119 recommendations. I think it is very important that the board does an impact assessment so we can see the benefits of the report, how the recommendations have been accepted and track that. That will be one of the matters and objectives that will come up in the board plan. So I want to thank you, Edwin, for your report. And again, I would like to thank Andrew Gilbert once again for holding the fort. We're looking forward to the new team and all of your fantastic work. So we now are ahead of time. So we have plenty of time now for questions. Can I please ask Ben Crown to present his report next? Thank you, Ben.
Thanks very much, Marie. Of course, we see how much more effective it is and efficient to have these meetings in a hybrid setup. For the first time, we're running ahead of schedule. I'll just pick up a couple of things that have been said before, a couple of points in my report, then I'll open up to questions. There have been a couple of questions before about minutes and confidentiality. I think there has to be a recognition that there's a difference between the extemporaneous stuff that deputies might say in an open meeting, regardless of whether or not it's being live streamed, and then creating a written permanent record of that can be circulated publicly. I'm happy to go back to the F&O to take wider views on this. There are a lot of other documents which we send out which describe our work. If people do want there to be a public record of the plenaries, and I'm sure we'll be happy to look into that, but there has to be recognition that that will be less detailed and will probably describe people's views in less detail and assign views to less individual people than the current setup where there are very detailed records of exactly what's been said by everyone. So I'm happy to take that away and look at it, but there does need to be an appreciation there's a trade-off. Second of all, obviously, this is our first hybrid meeting. It's more hybrid than we expected, obviously, because Amanda is still in COVID isolation. So we are flipping back and forth. I hope it's working okay. I hope it's working reasonably smoothly for people. We do have these built-in delays. They'll get a little bit shorter over time as we become familiar. Deputies can see I've been on my phone. I promise I'm not texting my wife. It is to sort out various technical agenda things as we go along, and we will see how it goes. I think we really hope that the next meeting, deputies can't see, but that we are facing about 30 chairs. I really hope the next meeting will have deputies in all those chairs. There's a screen. The reason why we keep looking over to our right, to your left, is that that's where the screen is. That's where our Zoom view of everyone online is. So I think it's been very valuable to do this. We'll have a few refinements for next time, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic that we'll be back here in a month with some more people, and we'll work through the additional issues that arise at that point. Just a couple of things from my report. First of all, as deputies will have seen, we have draft figures for the whole of 2021. Obviously, there's a need for the year-end accounting process. The audit is on the way, accruals and adjustments and so forth. But in cash terms and where we are, it's been a pretty positive and successful year. Though, of course, I can only take credit for 7/12 of it. My thanks to my predecessor, Stuart MacDonald, and, of course, the whole professional team as well. We finished a little bit ahead of budget. We've had net expenditure, take into account direct income from our investments, about £20,000 going out, against divestment gains of about £400,000, which is sort of gratifying overall output that gives us a nice cushion for 2022 and beyond to continue to build the reserves while running what we expect will be a growth budget next year. We hope to tie down the budget before the next plenary meeting, but we're looking at a year of growth. We're coming out of COVID, more public events, hopefully more plenaries, hopefully more visits to places, a full professional team, a full programme of activities. I think we're very excited about the rest of the year. There's going to be a lot going on, but it will cost money, and we will need to raise some money in order to fund all that in a responsible way. So we will be reaching out and continuing to reach out to deputies. First of all, for the communal contribution. My real thanks to everyone thus far who has helped in their synagogues, with their nominations, with the help of to help the FNO with their work, to raise, to increase, to collect and bring in the common contribution. We are sitting nicely ahead of our budget for the year, but it is early doors. I think in particular, I won't embarrass the communities by naming them, but my thanks go to the individual deputies who have managed, 3 or 4 of them, who have managed to bring in multiple years of back payments from their synagogues. It's really appreciated. It gives us a very nice little bump. We reached out to some deputies to help for more help, in particular looking to pull together a formal fundraising committee to go out and raise money from individual donors. As per my report, the FNO, in particular with the help of Michael Ziff, we're looking to push on that front. We're also looking to push on a summer reception to replace the dinner as our major flagship fundraising networking event of the year. If anyone is interested in helping with that event and being involved in the events team and so forth, then in being a summer table host, please reach out and be in touch. And there will be more coming on that reasonably soon. There's engagement, and while I'm asking for people for help, just again, it's the end of my report, and I appreciate there are a lot of papers. So if anyone hasn't made it through there, we are looking in particular in our deputies engagement work for someone who is an expert on sort of market research and focus and survey, focus groups and so forth, to help us reach out to a small but representative number of deputies, old and new, across various demographic categories, in order to do a little bit of research and get a sense of deputies' engagement with the board, deputies' engagement with their communities, where we're doing well, where we can look to build. So anyone who has expertise in that area to help the working group, we greatly appreciate it. I'll throw it open to some questions.
You have a question from Jerry. Jerry Lewis has his hand up.
Jerry, please go ahead.
Sorry. Oops. Hear me?
Jerry, I hear you absolutely fine.
Oh,
I don't
sorry,
see
I didn't
you,
realise.
but I hear you fine.
You hear me fine. In a nutshell, I saw a reference, Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. I saw a reference to the possibility of holding a hybrid meeting next month and the possibilities of having deputies gathering together in the future, which is wonderful. However, can I just mark the card with regard to the JW3? I live very close to it, probably the deputy who lives closest to it. The Finchley Road, where it is located, has now become a road where you cannot park at all during the day. It is a clear way, bus lane, and there's very limited parking on side streets.
Jerry, I parked on the Finchley Road 2 hours ago before I came into this meeting in a designated bay.
So there are very few designated bays. If you have 30 deputies, that's fine. But if you're going to have anything like the normal number of deputies that come to a physical meeting, we're going to have to think very carefully two things. One, we've always traditionally had our meetings near the stations so that deputies travelling by train can reach the board easily. And second of all, we've tried to make sure that there are facilities available for refreshments, etc., nearby. I'm not going to go into the refreshment side of things. What I am going to speak about is briefly the parking problems around the JW3, the lack of train services on a regular basis for those coming into London who would have to then take a tube or bus to get to this location. But also, I wanted to point out, please bear in mind now that as from tomorrow, the congestion charges are changing and will run 12 o'clock on a Sunday, so that if you use a central London location, you can have, if you're bringing your car to the board meeting, we're going to have to pay £15 for parking after 12 o'clock. These are facts.
Sorry, Jerry, I think you were...
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I can only assure you that we are aware of the parking issues here and in other locations, like you said. In Euston, the congestion zone will run to a Sunday. It was always very difficult to find parking in Euston in any place. There are, I think, 8 of us here. We all drove. There is some parking. There's not an enormous amount of parking, but especially on a Sunday morning, there are options. We will continue to look at it as part of the various considerations to finding a venue which works as well as it can for as many people as possible. I'm speaking to Jerry Michelson, the chair of the Regional Council, this week to try and work out going forward a protocol. For travel and so forth, there is a train station just down the road. People who are coming into Euston, I would be happy to fund cabs, not for every individual, but for small groups of deputies coming in together. Brian is making horrified looks at me. He reminds me that there's a massive Sainsbury's car park 300-400 meters down the road. I think we all know that whatever location we find is going to be a balance of different criteria. We're going to have something which has a good tech setup, which the BMA were unconvincing on. We have to find something that is accessible for as many deputies as possible. I do feel, and maybe I'm the only one, I do feel it's important, if possible, to use a community building. I do feel that's favourable to giving money to a sort of a central London venue hire. But we'll continue to look at all these things. I think we've got the tech set up at the moment at JW3. We'll try it for a couple of meetings. If we want to go somewhere else, then at least at that point we'll know exactly how to run the technological side of things. Marie, any more questions?
Yes, we've got David Benson, please.
Hi, David. Yes, please.
David Benson, United Synagogue, Birmingham Central. I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Are you looking to phase out the Zoom facility completely? Because I would think for several reasons that wouldn't be a good idea.
Sure, no, the Zoom facility will stay for, as far as I'm concerned, forever. That I think one of the really useful, encouraging things that's come out of the last couple of years is the number of deputies who'd be able to attend and engage with meetings has been vastly higher than when we had meetings just in person in Euston. My memory is 150 was about average, 180 was a good meeting. We had, I think, 260 deputies on Zoom in January. One of the reasons why we're taking the time now and we're moving slowly to explore this hybrid setup is to make sure we can create an environment where people in the room and people on Zoom will have sort of an equitable experience. Probably, I imagine what it will look like is you will have basically the same setup we have now, but with one extra camera, which will be for speakers in the room. And that way, people speaking in the room will be visible in the same way that individual deputies asking questions have been. We will be on a table together. Perhaps we will, be zoomed in a little bit more or not. Really, it's about so the amount of time and energy and money we have to spice up what we have. But there's no plans now or ever to go back to a setup where deputies have to come in person to central London. And we are looking, as we reintroduce physical aspects of these meetings, to preserve as much as possible the quality experience that people have online.
Thank you. Can I just add, it's very important, I understand, for regional deputies to feel they are fully engaged and able to come, and that must be a priority where we have our meetings. I'm going to make as much effort as I can to visit regional communities now that we are opening up again from coronavirus, and it's very important that we also arrange our regional meetings. Before I go on to David, I've just noticed that I think there is another question from Felix Mara, so we'll take Felix's question and then we will move on to David Mendoza-Wolfson.
Just before we take the question, can I thank all the deputies who are texting me with parking suggestions around JW3. I assure you I'm fine for parking around JW3, but perhaps we'll circulate them as and when it becomes an issue more generally. Felix.
Oh, yeah. Good morning. Yeah, just a little thing. I was wondering if it's possible. I note there are about 30 people in the room with you. Is it possible for people on Zoom to know who's in the meeting? Because obviously we can't see the people who you're facing. Do you see my point?
Yes,
it might be useful to know. Maybe it doesn't. Not a big deal.
No, so I think at the moment the only people we're facing are Daniel and Brian, are part of the professional team.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I think what we'll do, what I think we'd like to do going forwards, and again depends how many cameras we want. If we can have a big camera up behind me so you can see the whole room, or maybe we'll have this camera but zoomed out so you can see the audience. But yes, no, I appreciate that it's valuable to have sort of a view of the people in the room as well. We'll look to add that as we go forward.
Yeah,
but thank you
and I suppose vice versa to know who's in Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we go on, can I just say that I've had a message that the Queen has tested positive for COVID, and that she has, I think, modest symptoms, and we pray for a reviewer, Shalema, for the Queen. That message has just come in. David Mendoza-Wolfson, can you please present your report, please?
Absolutely, thank you very much. Can I start by actually thanking Marie and also Jonathan Cole and the whole board team. I had an operation in January, so I was out for a couple of weeks, and these guys did a huge amount of extra work to cover for me, so I really appreciate it, particularly Jonathan, who I know was sort of in and out of Barcelona at the time, so it really meant a lot. Just a couple of points I want to pick up on before I go to questions. Robert, I totally agree. Ambassador Simmons is doing an amazing job out in the Ukraine. On David Safir's point also, you're right, it's important that we are engaging across Jewish communities in the Ukraine. But of course, when it comes to the humanitarian work, I think Marie really covered it when she was saying that this is something that World Jewish Relief know very, very well, and we're here to provide support where possible, but we're not going to be able to do the kind of heavy lifting that these organisations are. On top of that, I think everyone has seen the report. Like I say, there were a few weeks that I wasn't as active as I'd have liked to have been, but we're getting back into things now. I'll be meeting over the next few weeks with the Australian High Commissioner, the Cypriot High Commissioner, the Czech Ambassador, and later next month with the Latvian, Dutch, Spanish and Austrian ambassadors. If you have specific interests in these countries, if you know of things that are happening, if you have connections with Jewish communities in those countries, please do send me an email, let me know. It's always good to know as much as possible going into these meetings, so send me an email at CC and our fantastic International Relations Officer, Talia Ingleby, and that's very much appreciated. So happy now to go on to any questions.
Yes, you've got questions that have come in from Jeremy Michelson, Joy Wolf, Paul Hart and Richard Cohen. If they can be taken in that order, I'll let you know any more questions.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Michelson, Manchester Great and Central Synagogue. First of all, David, it's good to see you back in good form. Hope you have a complete a recovery from this, and that no more illness for a long time. I noticed with interest that the Israel Pluralism subgroup of your international division is looking at three aspects of pluralism within Israel, and I wonder if you could just tell us which of those, which three aspects are they, please?
Yes, that's a very good question. Off the top of my head, I believe that they are prayer at the Kotel, including the Kotel deal and the things around that, marriage and conversion. I think those were the areas that the group decided to focus on. The group has had a couple of meetings. It's being led by Aaron Cohen-Gold, who I think is a deputy for Reform Judaism. We've got, the group is, I've got to say, a fantastic spread of people from across denominations and political views. The meetings have been really good and productive so far. If you have more questions about it, please do feel free to email me, email Aaron, and sorry, I'll have some water in a sec. We'll get back to you ASAP.
Thank you. So Joy Wolf, Paul Hart and Richard Cohen, and then Doris Schmetterling has come up as well. Joy.
Thank you very much. I'm suffering a little bit from shock that I'm sitting. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah. I'm suffering a little bit from shock that I'm sitting with a fellow deputy who actually spoke so positively. I'm not criticising the individual, please, but who spoke so positively about Amnesty International. Amnesty International has got a history of anti-Israel behaviour for years, not just this recent one. And I was very reassured to hear from Marie that we have no intention of giving them the oxygen of meeting with them or speaking to them. I think it needs to be totally ignored. And I think we have to recognise just how dangerous they are to Israel. And please, please, that we do not engage with them. So I just appeal for that. I would just like to say thank you to the officers who, when I complained last week that a fellow deputy made a false statement about me, that it has been removed from the minutes, and I'm very grateful for that. Obviously, from the point of view of what Natasha Hausdorff has to say, I hope there will be some further discussion and looking into that, because I think she's raising a very important point. But I just impress on everybody that we must absolutely divorce ourselves from Amnesty.
Thank you very much, Joy, for those points. Yeah, I mean, I think Marie's been pretty clear on the Amnesty report and our views. Amnesty, do and have done good work in a number of other areas around the world. They are a global human rights organisation. That said, they have made a number of missteps over the last few years, including with Russia and the sort of lack of recognition of the horrible political situation for opposition groups in the Russian Federation. Certainly when it comes to Israel, there is a real blind spot that we find very concerning. And I 100% agree with Marie on everything that she has said on that. Thank you, Joy.
So we are now Paul Hart, Richard Cohen and Doris Schmetterling. There's no one else at present.
Hi, David. Welcome back.
are we aware of the increase in anti-Semitism within the Ukraine? Are we also aware of the amount of neo-Nazi groups also within the Ukraine? And also the Ukrainian separatists who are preparing to arm their men with weapons to fight with the Russians? Isn't there any more that we can do to help the Jewish community in the future? God forbid it needs it, to get them out of the Ukraine, into the UK and other places. Should we be asking our schools to be ready to sponsor various groups? That's my question.
I think that it's really important that on the Ukraine, first of all, we make sure that we understand what the various Jewish communities across the Ukraine want. We're not here to sort of impose what we believe people want on them. With that said, we are keeping a very close eye. Yes, you're right, anti-Semitism is a problem in the Ukraine, as it is unfortunately in so much of the world, including with there are occasional issues to do with neo-Nazism due to a fairly appalling relationship that there is between certain groups and former Nazis who are sometimes viewed as liberators. This is again an issue that has taken hold over, frankly, a few Central and Eastern European countries. You know, people are often multiple things to different people, and we are always keenly aware of those sensitivities for the Jewish community. But yeah, when it comes to the Ukraine generally, again, this is about making sure that there is support in place, that we are assisting World Jewish Relief, but they are the experts on the issue. I would say, just further to that, my synagogue is twinned with a synagogue in the Ukraine, in the Odessa, so this is something that has a sort of an extra level for me and my community. Thank you.
One interesting thing about Ukraine is that it's the only country in the world, apart from Israel, to have a Jewish president and prime minister, which is something very special. But of course, anti-Semitism cannot be understated. So next we have Richard Cohen, Doris Schmetterling, and Lawrence Julius.
Great, Richard.
Yes, good afternoon, and it's very nice to see you restored to root health, David. Bezalel Smotrich, when Ambassador C.P. Hotovely was appointed, I don't remember seeing a Board of Deputies statement about some of the things that she said that we disapprove of. I think I'd go as far as saying that half of the things that she has said are things that we disapprove of when coming out the mouth of MK Smotrich. The other thing is that the Home Office didn't feel fit to issue any statement that his visit would not be conducive to the public good or were otherwise incompatible with his status as an MK. And finally, whilst I agree with the sentiments of the Board of Deputies press relief, I felt that it was couched in terms which are more worthy of the tabloid press than that of perhaps the Times or the Telegraph, and I believe that they represent a lowering of standards. I believe that we should aspire for the best standards rather than the worst standards in our statements.
Thank you, Richard. I'll start on your Home Office point. I understand the Home Office rarely makes statements. I also think that it's a testament to, frankly, how under the radar he made this. Nobody knew it was happening until he tweeted it out on an aeroplane, and frankly, a response was made. And I think we are all very much behind that response. When it comes to your comments on the ambassador is here to represent the State of Israel. MK Smotrich was here to represent abhorrent views. He does not represent the Israeli government. He was here, as far as we're aware, as an individual. Yes, he has a job, and that job is being a member of the Knesset, but he isn't in government. He wasn't representing the government, and I think that there's probably a reason that he didn't give much notice that he was coming, and that's because he knows that he wasn't welcome.
Thank you. We have Doris Schmetterling, Lawrence Julius, Adrian Cohen.
Thanks. Can I just text you that you can hear, because I'm using headphones but no loudspeaker?
We can hear you.
Right. Oh, good. Thank you. First a comment, then a question. Brief comment is, I think that following on from Joy Wolf's point, I think Natasha Hausdorff's issue could be discussed further. I don't think there's any question of looking into individual staff members' terms of contract. It's more a question of board policy. So I think that's worth exploring. But my comment to David is, first of all, thank you for, well, sorry, good to see you back, healthy. You mentioned a whole list of ambassadors, a varied, colourful list of ambassadors you're going to be seeing. I'm just interested to know on what basis you selected this list and in that order and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We reach out, sometimes are reached out to. Obviously, when we're reached out to, that has an impact on the list. Otherwise, we tend to reach out to various embassies based on different issues regarding Jewish communities around the world. And then we see how they get back to us and organise something. You know, we often look at lists of countries that it would be good to meet with and frequently reorganise those in terms of what we view would be useful meetings. For instance, you'll notice Latvia was on that list. Latvia very recently, the week before last now, passed a law to do with restitution. Frankly, I think that that's cause to meet with them, thank them and see what more can be done to support them in supporting both their Jewish community and, of course, Jewish heritage in Latvia. So that's sort of some of the ways that the list gets put together. Thanks, Dory.
Thank you. Lawrence Julius, Adrian Cohen and Ruth Hart. Oh, sorry, apologies. Lawrence Julius.
Hi, first of all, David, welcome back. And Amanda, thank you for the kind wishes at the beginning. We've had a recent case of abuse of freedom of information requests in Holland, with requesting universities by a pro-Palestinian BDS group to identify all Jewish and Israeli collaboration. This abuse of power is possibly going to spread to other countries, including the UK. I was wondering, how are the board going to approach this? How are we tackling this?
Thanks, Lawrence. First of all, you'll notice that the Netherlands was on my list of countries that we're meeting with the ambassadors soon. I should say this is something of personal interest, in particular to me. I studied in the Netherlands in Utrecht University, and I would be remiss to say that this is a cross-Netherlands issue, not just Holland, which is, of course, just 2 of the provinces. There are 14 universities affected by this Freedom of Information request. At the present time, they have stopped complying with the request. They've made an official appeal to the government to not have to follow it any further. It is an absolute, like you say, abuse of freedom of information. It's aimed at they are claiming Zionist organizations, but this is one of those situations where we all know what that means. They're talking about, focusing on communications work they're doing with our sister community, with Jewish communities in the Netherlands and across the world, and it's frankly abhorrent. The leader of the organization is a former Dutch Prime Minister who has form on this. He has been called out as an anti-Semite, and I don't think that we would be wrong to say that this freedom of information has been made simply to make universities and other public organizations nervous about working with Jews. We will do everything we can to support the Dutch Jewish community and Dutch universities with this, and this will be a key topic that we discuss with the Dutch Embassy. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. And the last question at the moment is Ruth Hart.
Good morning. With reference to Richard Cohen's comments about Bezalel Smotrich, with which I substantially agree, he's not welcome here. But in fairness to Ambassador Hotoveli, it should be noted she did not refer to gay people as beasts or murderers.
Yeah, I mean, taken and accepted. Thank you for that. I mean, it's absolutely true.
Thank you. That is very, very well put, Ruth. She absolutely has not said the racist and homophobic things that we know that Bezell Smotrich has said. I'd like to thank everybody for their valued contributions today. I think for the first time we've actually finished a few minutes early. I want to thank everybody for bearing with us. It's been a very difficult attempt at a hybrid meeting, so we're still learning. So thank you. Again, I'd like to thank the staff team for all the incredible things that you have seen the board doing. Also, that includes our very valued consultants, Liz Harris, who's helped greatly with the Pope. I would also like to say, because there have been a number of questions putting this in all different ways, the staff were not responsible for the Smotrich tweet, and our Director of Public Affairs, Daniel Sugarman, who has been questioned previously, he was on holiday. The tweet was authorised by the Honorary Officer team and the Chief Executive, and we take responsibility for the tweets that we have issued and the statement behind it. So if that was what all this questioning was about, I just need to make that absolutely clear. And I want to reiterate what a wonderful staff team we have and the amazing work that we do. We couldn't do without our fantastic team. I would want to also wish a Refuah Shalema to the Queen. I understand that she is on night duties. We pray for her recovery at this very, very difficult time, and I think that's a good time to end our discussion today. And I want to thank you for everything that you do for your communities. It's very, very valuable, and we hope that we will all be able to come together and see you soon. But in the meantime, let's keep talking, let's keep communicating. Thank you. Have a very lovely afternoon. Thank you.
Nice series.
Can't hear the room.
Amanda, everyone else is leaving. You're still there.
Yeah, I know, but I can't hear the room, so to speak. If they want to have a debrief like we've normally done, I was assuming I was staying on.
I sent you another link for later on.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've got that link, but
yeah, no, I know. I understand what you're talking about now. I understand.
Yeah. but I can't hear. They seem to be not connected to sound.
I'll go downstairs and find out where they all are.
Okay.
I think you can't hear.
Yeah.
I also don't know what arrangements there are now, because.
What do you mean, what arrangements there are?
Well, had I been in the room with you, I would, I'm assuming you're going off to have lunch.
Correct. Your salad is here.